I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. Had toxic mold in my body. I had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Some doctors said I had metal toxicity. Everything that we talk about in the health world.
Yeah.
I had a label for.
Wow.
So, and I didn't have a guide. And so luckily my superpower is tenacity and digging my heels in, and I figured it out.
Nice. You had to, man. You were going to die. Otherwise, there was no option.
It was probably not going to go well.
Yeah.
And when I say I figured it out, there was no moment. There was definitely a moment of me dropping and praying and say, my goodness, if I ever get through this, I'll just be a role of service. I'll just help other people. That's all I want. And I made that deal. I made a deal with God, with the universe.
Good morning and welcome to the Fusionary Health podcast. I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and this is the podcast dedicating to recalibrating your health every day. My goal is to help you wake up each day energized by addressing root causes and giving you new approaches to preventive health. The more we know about integrative health, the more empowered we are in building the vibrant health we want.
Welcome to the Fusionary Health podcast. I have a special guest in store for you today, and we're going to dive into topics like your lymphatic system, castor oil, a big journey and a health journey around cancer and recovering from it and what that took, the different tools we have available in the biohacking world and in the naturopathic, organic, healthy world that we have around us to use to build our health. So welcome to my special guest today, Freddie Kimmel.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for joining me today, Freddie. I met you at an A4M conference, I think in the last 2 years. And I just remember thinking, I really like him. Like, he feels like home. You're one of those people who just is so warm and so present in your own body. It's just been a joy to get to see you at every conference. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. Same. I would say that, there's so many people at these events. Sometimes there's 5,000 people and you might have a couple souls that you connect with for a few minutes. And we sort of like, there's going to be more that's going to unfold for this story.
Exactly. So let's dive into your story and what led you to where you are now. Because I know it's a tremendous story and experience that you had in this life that led you to the journey that you're on with your health and really always unpacking and discovering new ways that we can approach our health. Yeah.
It's funny. We revisit the stories we tell a lot, and I've been doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, and with a therapist. And it's amazing to go back and view these events with a guide, unravel some moments that were almost too much to feel, and then integrate those experiences. Sure. So we move away from this disassociative behavior. And I've been in that for 8 weeks. So I give all that context just to say it's always new for me to go back and revisit these things. Yeah. I would say that where do you start this story? The story really starts when I moved to New York City in 2001. I had dreams of becoming a Broadway performer and to sing and dance and act for a living. And you know the story. It's like, it's so competitive in New York. I had set down my bags. My friend said, let's just try an audition to see how you do. And you want to get used to failing. You want to feel how bad it feels not to get an audition with there's thousands of people there. And of course I went to my first one and I booked it. So I had booked this Broadway tour of Annie Get Your Gun. I toured all over the country.
Wow.
And this was September 11th. So I'd moved to the city, and you can imagine the southern tip of the city is smoking. There's ash coming up from the buildings. It's a very heavy time. And I would come home from being out in the city and around people, not really understanding how sensitive I was as an empath, as a true empath. I feel deeply in the tissues when I experience other people's emotions. And I would come home at the end of the day, and I would not tell anybody this, but I would go I would take a shower and I would just cry. I would off gas emotion. And it was just, I didn't have the emotional intelligence or the awareness to know something big was going on for me. But that happened a couple weeks. And then one morning I wake up with full body rheumatoid arthritis. Every joint in my body hurt to hold a coffee cup. My knees were warm and hot to the touch. Now, I was 23 at the time, so didn't really know. I didn't know what to do about it. I ate Advil. I sought out some type of a rheumatologist, and they were like, your blood's fine. You don't have RA, but here's indomethacin. Here's some painkillers. Yeah. Another doctor gave me Plaquenil and hydroxychloroquine. Yeah. And what that did is it kind of kept the fire at bay for a few years until one morning I woke up and I had some pain in my belly. It was really intense. Towards the end of the day, I could barely stand. I was like, I should go to see a doctor or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I go into the emergency room, and long story short, I ended up being diagnosed with testicular cancer. I had testicular cancer that had spread to the lymph nodes in my abdomen. I had a tumor surrounding my left kidney, around the vena cava, going to my heart. I remember my doctors pulling up an MRI on the screen, and they were like, there's cancer here and here and here and here. And you can imagine, I was 26 years old at the time. My dreams were unfolding. I was a performer. The quality of the work was going up and up and up. I had booked a show at the Kennedy Center to sing for the president. I mean, it was going so well. And then you're looking at this screen, and you're never entertaining the idea at 26 years old that I was going to go through cancer.
Of course. That's so insane.
Yeah, it was wild, a wild experience, such a left turn on life. Very quickly, I decided I was going to approach cancer with the same vigor and tenacity that I did trying to be a professional actor.
Okay.
And I just dug my heels in, and I didn't know anything about the health. I wanted, just for scope, I was double fisting Egg McMuffin sandwiches on the way to chemotherapy in the morning. I was eating the white bread sandwiches and Coca-Cola and the candy they would bring around through oncology. I just didn't think those things mattered. I thought my goal was to eat a lot. In my head, I was like, well, I don't want to get thin like a typical cancer patient. I don't want to have cachexia and lose all this weight. I just want to keep eating. So this was about, I want to say I started treatment in the fall. I did 4 rounds of this chemotherapy called etoposide cisplatin. You could only do 4 rounds of very intense chemo. With each sequential session, I got weaker and weaker. I don't know if you remember E.T. Do you ever see the movie E.T.?
Yeah.
When he comes to Earth, he's pretty vibrant, he's green, he's weird. But then towards the end, when he started to lose his life force, they find him in the river and he's all white and gray. That was me at the end of the chemotherapy. I had no hair. I had lost all my muscle mass. I didn't look like me. Wow. I go back and look at pictures. Sometimes it's shocking how much my face changed. And, you're on these mass amount of steroids, and the drugs are really harsh on the tissue. When we got done with the chemotherapy, my cancer wasn't gone. I went in and remembered they're like 4 rounds. It's going to be, we do 1, 2, 3, or 4. Same cancer that Lance Armstrong had. Wow. At 4, it should all melt away. That's our hope. If not, we'll look at other options. We got done and it wasn't gone. We looked at the screen. There were still these big tumors big masses on the MRI.
Got it.
And so my doctor said, what we're going to do is a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. We're going to cut from sternum to pelvis. We're going to take out your digestive organs, and we're going to slip away and cut away all the lymph nodes that are infected. And I think I posted a couple other days on Instagram 3-4 days ago, like these arrows that show all these surgical clips in my belly. And there's tons of them. There are 50. I don't know how many. I just did a couple arrows on it. It was like 20 arrows, but there's clips everywhere where they took out the lymph. Wow. And this surgery was beyond intense, this retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. It kind of went sideways. A 2-3 day stay turned into 12 days without food, without water, being in intensive care. Incredible. Man, yeah, you talk about walking through the valley of death, right? Yeah. I was really kind of building a condo there. I was like, I'll just hang out here for a while.
Yeah.
But at the end of that experience, I was declared cancer free. Wow. And I kind of thought, I was like, okay, now, it happened. That was intense. Let's get back to work. And the reality was is within a couple months, I was eating dinner in my parents' house, and my intestine, my small bowel, twisted. I had started to form scar tissue in my small bowel. So I had what's known as a complete small bowel obstruction in it. It is equated within pain to be more intense than childbirth, people say, and it's blinding pain. Went to the emergency room. That kept happening over the next few years, every couple months, where 2-3 days of vomiting, violent pain. In 2011, I was rushed in. It wouldn't release. They quick opened up the belly, my whole belly again, took out a foot of small intestine. 2015, we went in and did laparoscopic surgery. So this is 2006. I'm trying to give you scope. 2001, autoimmunity. 2006, cancer. 2011, removal of small bowel. 2015, they're going in there and slicing scar tissue. My last surgery was 2015. And it's a really, the story, it's a lot of medical trauma, that happened in my body. And within that, I quickly figured out, I was offered opiates for pain. I was offered palliative care. There was not a lot of, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to be functional? What can I do to go to the bathroom again? Okay. What can I do to eat a meal and not be in incredible pain from the onslaught of things that were, the autoimmune flared to a level 10. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. I had toxic mold in my body. I had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Some doctors said I had metal toxicity. Everything that we talk about in the health world. Yeah. I had a label for. Wow. So, and I didn't have a guide. And so luckily my superpower is tenacity and digging my heels in, and I figured it out. Nice.
You had to, man. You were going to die. Otherwise there was no option.
It was probably not going to go well. Yeah. And when I say I figured it out, there was no moment. There was definitely a moment of me dropping and praying and say, my goodness, if I ever get through this, I'll just be a role of service. I'll just help other people. That's all I want. And I made that deal. I made a deal with God, with the universe. Yeah. And like, the road to wellness, it's windy and we go back a lot and then we go forward. But I sit before you today. I said before you today, extremely functional. I can do a front flip on the trampoline. I travel all over the country. I work very diligently. I produce a podcast every week. I work for, you mentioned, different companies like Flopresso and as a consultant. And I love all things health. And I have the vibrant energy to be able to do all these things because of the shared belief system that you and I have, that the body can heal, the body can recover. And it's just it's a process of managing the overwhelm and asking better questions. And that's really, that's it. So that is my truncated version.
Yeah. And that's a lot. I mean, talk about a profound health journey that will change your life. And I think I hear so many health journeys with anyone who's in this space. Any of us who show up ready to teach health, it's because it had such a profound impact on us and we have to share it. But I think your story is like 100x more complicated and worse than anyone I've ever heard, because you really were walking through Death Valley for quite a while there, just on that brink with so much coming at you. And I think it's so beautiful that you got through it and you came out the other side as this, because you could just as easily be bitter and frustrated and lacking in vibrancy. But it sounds like on that journey, you went and found the mentors, you found the guides, the right guides walked into your life to help support you. And I know when we converse, we love talking about how is it that we can keep showing people that we have incredible tools available to us. So will you share the next step on your journey of how you learned about all the different lymphatic tools and these types of health tools that you use? And what were some of the key ones that kind of got you out of that moment, that phase? I can't even call it a phase, that journey. Yeah. Epic hero's journey of coming, you got through it, but then now finally discovering and understanding how root cause and supporting the body and stabilizing homeostasis for the body was going to be the key for your next step.
Yeah, I think that's key, and it's just, again, it is such a winding road. There wasn't a moment of saying, oh, this is it. It was really me learning the body systems, through different programs, like, and 100 different mentors. And honestly, one of the biggest places of value I got knowledge from, like lived knowledge, was long form content and podcasts.
Sure. True.
People like back in the day, Tim Ferriss was a huge mentor. With the Bulletproof came out, with Dave started talking about all the next level health stuff. I mean,
Dave Asprey's fantastic. Yeah.
I remember being like a kid in the candy store. Luke Story, I could go on, and there were things like taking the standard American diet and going full organic, full whole food, and I never deviated from that.
Sure.
That was massive. There's a massive change in how my body experienced inflammation. So if we go back and look at some of those things, I'm like, oh, that was a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Like without that, the time in my life when I found pulsed electromagnetic field, a system called amp coil, which does an electromagnetic wave to stimulate or encourage the recovery of the cell's ability to breathe, dump garbage, and make energy. Without that step,
right,
I don't think the pulsed electromagnetic field would have held the value. So oftentimes I find in the space is this was frustrating to me when I would pull together $1,000 and I would go buy a tool, or I would pull together, $5,000 and go buy a tool, or $10,000, and it wouldn't deliver salvation. I got frustrated.
Sure.
And so my broken model of thinking was looking for silver bullets.
Yeah.
And that, in the last 4 years, that's really shifted for me. And I've stopped looking for silver bullets. I've said, okay, what are all these things? What is PEMF? What is lymphatic drainage? What's a red light therapy? What's a sauna? They're just tools in a toolbox.
Right.
And the thing that is the quantum computer that's taking in information and making adjustments on many different layers and levels is the human body. Okay. So I have to respect the operating system as I put in new information. So I just started to take more of a systems approach. Yeah. I mentioned changing food. I mentioned the pulsed electromagnetics was massive. You mentioned lymphatic drainage. Go ahead.
And I'd like to interrupt there for one sec, because
please
talk about a profound thought. It is all of us who are constantly looking for the silver bullet answer that'll just help us win. I do it all the time. I'm like, can you just tell me the answer? And it's ridiculous because I myself teach the entire Ayurvedic toolkit, fully knowing that I can't just pick one tool out of the toolkit. Unfortunately, you can't have a hammer and that's it. You need the nail, you need the wood that you're going to drive it into. Like, you need all the pieces of that puzzle. And so I just really appreciate that you said that, because some of us won't admit that. We won't admit that we're actually just looking for silver bullets instead of taking the ecosystem approach. And will you explain, I mean, of course, and we know that one, right? We know eat whole foods, don't eat the standard American diet, or at least most people know that one. It sounds easier than I think it is. I myself am always trying to eat healthier and cleaner and more organic. But let's say that was your first step. I love this idea of like a staircase and stepping stones upwards towards the result you want, and acknowledgement of don't skip. So you said, I did the first one and that laid the foundation for that next thing. And will you explain PEMF better? Because I have a PEMF hat that I sit on at work, and it's just not a science that I have understood in depth yet.
Yeah, I will. And so I also want to just add, this was my stepping stone. This is my journey up this, this Mayan pyramid, if you will. And I went my own way. Other people are going to go their own way. And it's just happened to be the way things were laid in my path from the right inspiration or guide or the universe. To explain pulsed electromagnetic field, think about our Earth is essentially it's a PEMF device. So the magma core and the layers of iron and dirt, as they rotate and circle around, the Earth emanates a magnetic field, which makes life on this planet possible. Now, we can insulate ourselves from the magnetic field anytime we wear sneakers, or anytime we're in a house that's not grounded, or in a car with rubber tires. So you can imagine, when you think about the design of modern life, how much we've engineered our our space away from this great magnet with an oscillating field. We talk about the Schumann resonance, right? The Schumann resonance is actually an average of all these peaks and troughs and waves of the magnetic field that comes from the planet. So when we say a PEMF device, pulsed electromagnetic field, we're running an electrical current, usually through some type of a coil. If you've ever heard of a modified Tesla coil, where you'd see these arcs of energy jumping from it, that's a version of a coil. And so this is something that, the way we live with the technology that we integrate with today is because of people like Nikola Tesla. So running this current through an electromagnetic coil is essentially it's creating this electromagnetic wave. So what we're doing in space is we're exciting all the electrons in the space, and they're going different directions, and it gets a little complicated. But when the body is interfacing with that electromagnetic field, it's helping the voltage of your cell, the charge of your cell, to be upregulated. So you have a charge. Each cell really functions like a little battery. There's a net positive on the outside, a net negative on the inside. And that differential is what allows food and nutrients to flow in and out of the cell. Now we can change this voltage by many means. We can really screw it up when we overhydrate or underhydrate, when we hyperdeplete the body of minerals. All those things affect the cell's ability to be a little battery. And so when we talk about electromagnetic wave, it's stimulating the electrons within that cell. It's helping the cell to make more energy, dump more garbage, and breathe as a result of it being charged like a little battery. And one way we can see this, we can see a great example is horses. Sure. If you look at farm animals, they have there is no placebo with a horse. Yeah.
True.
So you can use an electromagnetic coil on a horse with a limp, and immediately its gait normalizes. Same with puppies. Respond incredibly quickly to pulsed electromagnetic field. And so it's amazing for pain, amazing for arthritis, because within that joint that's become less mobile, there's a stagnancy, which is improved with an electromagnetic field. So you can think about the idea that the body's capable of making cellular energy through our little mitochondria within the cell.
Right.
And we can amplify this process using a device like PEMF. So, when I started using it, what I really noticed was my scar tissue, which would twist and it would send me to the ER. It went from happening every 40 days to maybe happening, now it's once a year.
Wow.
It's very rare, and that is probably like one of my go-to tools. It was for many, many years with the amp coil system.
Sure.
And it just would help it release immediately, because the body really does respond to this electromagnetism. And it's we can go all the way back to biomagnetism therapy, in which people would take different dipole magnets and put them on different meridian points, right, and allow the body's energy to open up and just flow, just like think acupuncture without needles.
Right. Yeah. So let's take a moment there, because I feel like talking to you is like talking to the most fun science teacher ever, who knows how to explain things in a way that you can actually absorb. Like the way you explained it just now, I'm like, perfect. It's the voltage recharge to my cells that helps them get to the level they need. And if I had time to go be in nature, which I teach from the Ayurveda perspective, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, my whole job is to say we have a circadian rhythm and we should be in nature more. But even I have a hard time always making sure that I fit in time in nature. Mm-hmm. It's just the truth of it. The way we've built our lives sometimes isn't as ideal for our health. And so I did get a PEMF mat from Therasage at one of the amazing conferences we all meet up at in the biohacking world. And I use it in my office. And I love that, because it's like my guarantee that I'm going to get the support from myself. Mm-hmm. And I will still make the time to go walk in nature for 30, 45 minutes in the evening and put my feet in the grass and ground. But I know you have been supportive and part of other companies. So what are some of your favorites for that? Because we all need options.
Yeah, always. And I think it's important to know, one thing you're going to find is, we mentioned like the idea of like being overwhelmed. It's very, in the health space, it's hard. It's like, there's so many devices and there's so many, that is capitalism. There tends to be like, everybody has the best device. They all work to some degree, but you're going to find a really, What I'll talk about is the strength of the field. You know, if there's a $25,000 PEMF device is not going to be the same as $1,000 mat. It's just
Totally.
yeah, you're wanting to say a tricycle is a Tesla, and it's just not. You know, there's a reason. The cost on many of these things is it's from the manufacturing, it's the parts, it's the labor. They're very heavy. They're hard to service. They need to be serviced. So, you know, the high power devices or let me say this, PEMF therapy is cleared by the FDA to heal a non-union fracture, which I love this example. So a non-union fracture would be two bones. You break your femur in half. Why isn't it connecting again? It's a non-union fracture. It's failing to connect. And so even after 7 or 8 years, you can have a non-union fracture, be under an electromagnetic coil, and all of a sudden the bone starts to regrow.
Wow.
So it's a re-remembering process. The PEMF doesn't do it.
Yeah.
It's signaling the proper amount of cellular energy to remind the body that the body heals the broken leg.
Wow.
So I still think, you know, in its understanding, it's in that container of the PEMF being able to heal. It's the body that does it. The body's being signaled, and it has the right amount of electrons that are excited in that process for the bone. So that's one extreme example that I love. And you know, think about the instance of people who pass away from a fall. You know, after you fall after 65, your mortality rate goes through the roof because it's not the hip, it's the lack of mobility. The bone never really heals. We lose all this functionality, and then, you know, our short little lives are over. And I think that's for me, what an underused tool. How is this not in every hospital in the world?
Yeah.
And I think it will be. I think it will be, but it's just, I bang my head against the wall sometimes, and nobody knows about it. Nobody. They're like, PEMF, what?
Exactly. And also we just undervalue it. So I see what you're saying, because I know the difference of quality. I'm in the world of supplements, and I can buy, you know, an ingredient at this cost, or the way up here, this cost. And we're always working on like, okay, well, I will never, once I know an ingredient is the best of the best, I will not use anything else. And so then we have to figure out how to make numbers work. But when you were talking about practitioner level, are you talking about devices then, which typically a practitioner would invest in? Because then there's lots of people who can come to that office and use it.
You can do either way, but there's powerful enough devices now that you can do for home. There's a new company called Aura Wellness, which is an offshoot of a company called MagnaWave, which MagnaWave now makes devices strictly for animals, high powered PEMF devices. And now there is a human line that is FDA registered within that realm of strength. And I should say this. They all work, and they all work in the same way. But with PEMF, you have to use the inverse square law. So the further, every time you double your distance away from the source point of the field, you're taking the power in half. So reaching the inside of a hip, right? Yeah. You know, if you think about the PEMF that comes off the earth, remember I said the earth has PEMF. Yes. You know, we're looking at a range between like 65 and 90 microtesla. That is the density of the field. Okay. It's very, very low. So a lot of the PEMF mats are in that 60 to 95 microtesla. Sure. Whereas we could have these high power that are like 4,000 Gauss, 8,000 Gauss, which is very thousands and thousands of times stronger. So strong that you'll get actually a contraction in the muscle belly. And then you have devices in between, you know. So you gotta really take your time and do your research, and there's tons of great resources out there. And what I'd say is nothing will substitute your experience. So the best thing to go is to go try some of these things and say, well, what am I dealing with? What am I struggling with? Let me tell you what, it's a tough field to pick out the right device. When we look at devices, and I think this will go for anything we talk about, I look at what's the application. What's the warranty look like? Right. Can I get this serviced when technology breaks? Because it will break. Who is supporting me? Right. And really it's like, well, where is the education? You know, a lot of those are great ways to decide if this is a good fit for you.
And who's the founder? And
That matters too. Yeah.
what is the feeling I get from the founder? A lot of how I judge what I buy in this space is
Yeah.
who am I talking to? Can I look them in the eye? What is their knowledge base and what is their passion for what they're doing? Because in this modern day, I feel like it's actually not that hard for people to, if you wanted to go make a PEMF mat, you could probably go find a factory in China and make it. Like
tomorrow.
It's not that hard to go on Alibaba and make all sorts of garbage in the world. Not that everything off Alibaba is garbage, but all sorts of stuff. And that doesn't mean anything. If you're doing something to make a buck, that's one way to do business. I get it. But my way to do business is the opposite. Like I literally go into something trying to figure out how to make the best thing on earth. And then I'm like, okay, I figured it out. Oh, apparently I have to put a business around it to get it out there. Okay. Yeah. So I try to find those founders where it's actually the original founder who's doing it and not necessarily like this mega corporation on earth.
Yeah. And so that's why the first device I bought that I invested in, I bought the amp coil system. And so I actually got on the phone with the founder.
Nice.
And I heard their story on a podcast and I was like, wow, this is exactly, I had bought the device. Ironically, I had bought a home with floor to ceiling black mold in it. So I just went all the gains that I had in like 2017, I just started to like really hit the floor again. I was like, what is going on? Why do I feel like this? Why don't I remember words? And so I'd started to listen more, the different long form content podcasts about PEMF. And I had seen, the idea of the cell to be able to dump garbage and make more energy. I'm like, my cells feel like they need a jump start.
Sure.
So that was, I talked to the founder, Aaron, on the phone, and then I met his wife, and I was like, oh my God, these people, they like love so hard. All they want to do is help humanity, to the sacrifice of self. They're just the mission was more powerful than anybody I'd talked to. Nice. And so I had my answer, even before I tried the device, I had my answer because I was like, they're in it for the right reasons. So absolutely. It's a great reminder that in this day and age, you can pretty much find out, why people are doing them, where it's coming from, all those good nuggets.
And you can feel that from them. And lately I've been putting myself in the rooms with those founders. It makes me feel a lot less crazy. I'm like, okay, we're all change makers. We're all here to shift humanity. Like there's such power in bringing that collective together.
Yes.
Because then there's so much potential. There's just potential there. It's magic potentials is how I think of it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And you said something really good too. I just want to add on to, I want to join with you in that the fact that you can go totally buy a device, you can get it from a factory, you can get it for dollars, but it doesn't have the cost of doing business in there. Right. And the cost of doing business is that support model. It's a support team. It's repair, it's service, it's education, it's certification through the regulatory bodies. Sure. One of the companies that I work with, we just got our device approved through FDA as a class 2 medical device. And I'm going to tell you what, it's not cheap. It's so the burden falls. That is a cost of doing business to go through these, to do a clinical trial, to do a study. I mean, the money around these things, it's incredibly expensive, as you know.
Oh, I'm doing it right now. I'm pursuing clinical trials and I'm a year behind. Like I was last year spring, I've got this. This is amazing. The team is ready.
Yeah.
And I did a PhD, like literally my job was reading clinical studies in science for years. And I completely underestimated the cost, the work, the involvement, the team, the double-blind placebo-controlled trials. You guys who are listening are no joke. It is a huge undertaking. It's why supplement world has a hard time with it. It's not easy when you're small. You are really like David and Goliath trying to just get a lift. And it's self-investment on my side. I'm like, all right, well, I just want to change humanity. So I will just find this money somewhere. Yeah. But let's go back to what we were talking about earlier. You started with plant food and shifted the diet. And that was stepping stone 1 on
whole food. Yes.
Whole food, plant-based diet. Step 2, PEMF, which I love. Like you had that intuition that, hey, the cells need the support. So what was one of your next steps after that you think made a big difference for you?
My goodness. Red light therapy was huge for me.
Okay.
Red light therapy is, I found a panel system that I love, and I would stand in front of these full body red light panels. Red light therapy has the ability to act as a therapeutic to the skin. It's absorbed by the cell. Again, it also helps to release nitric oxide within the cell.
True.
If you know anything about nitric oxide, paramount to our health, it's something that drops off dramatically after age 30. Helps with vasodilation, circulation. Obviously, with that, we have the transportation of all these vital nutrients to the extremities of the body.
Right.
And it's also amazing for collagen and skin and the depth of wrinkles in our skin. So even after like 9 weeks, I think it's called the Fitzpatrick wrinkle scale. Someone can correct me on that. There's a scale monitor, and it looks at the depth of wrinkles from picture 1 to picture 2. But we see these dramatic reductions in wrinkles. If this is something that you're going to do steady. I do it every day. I wake up. It's part of my morning routine. I have a full body of it. I think it's 6.5 foot, 18 inches wide, this massive panel system. Okay. I stand there, and that's part of my morning routine. Now, I will tell you that the reason why there's benefit for the human biology is that we're doing this spectrum of red light, right? Which the spectrum of red light, which exists in nature, is our first couple hours of the rising sun. So The real hack,
morning yoga in the sun.
Just to get outside with that sun now.
In as little clothes as possible.
As little clothes as possible. Which we can we can giggle. Yeah, we can giggle right now how silly it is for somebody in Wisconsin in January.
Right.
It's not always realistic based on where you live. So again, this is where technology is great. We're harnessing something that existed in nature, which was involved in our evolution is the apex predator on the planet. And we're saying, well, what have I engineered out that I can bring back in? So, again, red light therapy, it was amazing for scar tissue. I have a belt, it's a wearable. And so I wear it right on my belly. And that, again, it's so down regulating. That was absolute game changer for me. This, and just a super sweet, just to give a shout out, Scott Kennedy, just a veteran. He's an inventor. Nice. I did Broadway music theater with his daughter. And he, it's so funny. We had shared that experience, and then he's like, oh, I'm coming out with this red light. This is like, 9 years ago. Wow. And I've watched them just grow and grow and grow, and they make an incredible panel, longest warranty in the market. Yeah,
what 5 year.
It's called Light Path LED. Okay. They're based out of Cooperstown, New York, and family business. You get a picture of the family with each light, and I've never seen a light that good on the market. Again, it's the warranty. It's built. It's like encased wrought iron. They're very heavy, but they're very durable. Nice. And the warranty, it pulses different frequencies. So you can pulse anywhere from 0 to 10,000 hertz. As research comes out, pulsing red light is purported to be able to reach a different penetration within the body or using unique frequencies like 10 hertz versus 40 hertz. 10 hertz in the brain versus 40 hertz. 40 hertz is shown to help restore cognitive function, especially in different levels of dementia. Nice. So there's all these possibilities. There's a scientist back in the day, I think it was Nogier. Was it Paul Nogier? He had frequency sets, frequency to identify with the dermis, frequencies for brain health, there were set frequency rates, 292, I think, is for skin. But he found within veterinary medicine that animals responded to different pulse rates. So this panel has all those frequency sets pre-programmed in the panel. So you can just touch a button. This is what I want to do today. This is what I want to do today. So
I love that. And red light is one of those things. I have a place I go to do infrared sauna because I know the benefits. In Ayurveda, we teach so much about detoxing. So to me, it's key that I'm consistently detoxing. And she has red light panels built in there. So you can just and you get your red light therapy. But I have been thinking about buying red light panels for my home so that I can get it more frequently than just when I go to infrared. Do you stand in your morning routine for how long, and how dressed are you for this process? I'm curious.
Naked. Okay. 10 and 10. 10 minutes on the front. Look around, do 10 minutes on the back. Okay. And there's a really good video where do I have a video linked? I have a YouTube channel where I have I walk through one of Scott's panels, but
Nice.
it comes down to irradiance. There's so many, as you could say, you could have a red light in a sauna. But is there enough power in that bulb? Are you at the right distance to really get that cellular energy?
Sure.
And one of the great ways to test that is to do the little nitric oxide test strips.
Okay. Yes.
You do one before you do the therapy. It can be kind of a light pink. If you do a really good red light, that strip should be dark purple because you've released so much nitric oxide in the system. So that's a great little hack.
Nice.
But it comes down to how much light comes through that panel. And that's really where, again, if we'll have this conversation around, well, what's the good one?
Sure.
You got to look at irradiance, beam angle. It's like, how wide is the beam broadcasting, and is it going wide into the room, or is it focused on the body? The wider the beam angle, the cheaper the bulb.
Okay.
The panels can have a chip. So, sometimes you look at a red light and it looks like some of the bulbs are off, some are on.
Yeah.
So that's the near and the far infrared spectrums. The invisible one actually goes deeper. Okay. Now they have, on Scott's new panel, they have dual chips. So each bulb can have both wavelengths of frequency at the same time. So there's all these little nuance innovations. I've had him on the podcast. He'd be a great guest for you. He's such a great red light nerd.
Nice.
And so he's been on like 3 times. So I've had tons of tutelage on red light therapy. And it's such a win-win because it's like pain, cognitive function, cellular energy, and beauty. It's like, who doesn't want those things? And you were saying you're like
beauty and brains.
brains. Yeah,
seriously.
You go somewhere for it, but the reality is, like, you can get like the mega home system for like $3,300, and that's a whole body wall of a big 6 foot, 15-inch wide panel on a rolling stand that you're going to get a lot of value from. So it just depends on like time and what you want to invest and if it's a right fit for your paradigm.
Sure. And what I love about it is so many of us have so many desires when it comes to our health. Of course, as someone who's into health and biohacking and vibrant health, I want all of it. I'm like kid in a candy store. I go to the biohacking expos and conferences and I'm like, can't I just have it all? Like, I should have a biohacking room. And then I think to myself, you know what? Be honest with yourself. What are you actually going to do? And what are you actually going to put the time into? Don't like BS and think that you're going to spend 3 hours a day using tool after tool. And because I teach Ayurveda, I very much always reset to, why are you not just going in nature? Come on. Yeah. But I think, like you said, weather and different things lead us to not getting what we need all the time.
Yeah.
Can't we have both? Can't we just juxtapose? Of course, we know nature's best. Do your best and guarantee the results you need for your health by investing in a few key tools, not all of them, the ones that resonate with you and work with you. And so I already know for a fact we're going to have to do a 2-part podcast episode.
Yes.
There's so much more I want to get into. But we'll finish in this section first, this first part of the conversation we're meant to have. And honestly, after talking to you, I'm like, it could be 10 parts because we could have fun forever.
Totally. Yeah, we could pick one thing. We could pick one thing.
We could pick castor oil next time. We could pick lymphatic next time. There's so many options. Yep. But I love this journey we're on. So you started with the plant-based whole foods, which is a beautiful place to start. You moved into PEMF, which honestly, most people wouldn't have moved into that second. So it's really cool that you got there because you really opened up your cells, got rid of the crap, changed the voltage of your cells after already supporting them from the ground up. Now you've got red light therapy on board. You're going to help cognitive, help pain, which you were suffering with a lot, really support the body's pathways again. And so what was your next Mayan stepping stone after that you found?
Oh my goodness. It's so, and even saying this out loud, there's so many that have fallen in and out of favor.
Sure.
That may not be in a linear order.
Sure.
Goodness. There was things like, and I'll just mention some things like contrast therapy, like an infrared sauna versus cold therapy, which that's been in, and I'm such a big proponent of those. It's such a mental shift for me in the mental game, allowing the body to, support detox pathways. And you may have heard this before with chronic illness. What I had known is that my body temperature, my core temp started to sit really low. So I was always cold. I could never get warm enough. The winters were just really hard for me in New York City. And I knew that beyond being in a sauna or trying to get warm as a therapeutic, I was like, okay, there's something to look at here. Why is my core temp so low? What's missing in the functionality of the body?
Sure.
And I think that contrast, it sounds counterintuitive, but getting in cold water, allowing my body to be in 40-degree water and reheating internally and readjusting to cold.
Right.
I never am cold anymore. I was just in Wisconsin a couple of months ago, and it was -9. We cut through 1 foot of ice to get in an icy lake, and I got in water, and I was there 5 minutes, and it was cold. But I, this is a great phrase. This is what cold is. This is what cold feels like. That's it. I'm not going to say it's bad. It's good. It's just, I was cold, but I was okay.
Right.
I wasn't panicking. I wasn't running for my coat. I got in the water, I got out, and I've done it enough that my body has, especially through some of the contrast therapy, has just, it's found its baseline again.
Amazing.
And so that's been a really interesting therapy to have in the mix, and I mean, the big one over the last years has been, specifically the last year has been lymph.
Nice.
The reason why I was at the show we were at was, I work with a company called Flowpresso, which has a full body lymphatic drainage suit, which ironically also has infrared heat,
nice.
And vibrational tools for the face, head, and neck, and the axillary nodes in the armpit. So it's this full body lymphatic system. And the irony is, my cancer had spread to my lymph. No doctor at any time ever talked to me about what the lymph does, what it's supposed to do, the rationality of having all these lymph nodes removed and what I should do to manage that. Right. Nothing was never mentioned. So that's been something in the last year, which, yes, I've worked with how my body manages its intracellular fluid. And my favorite, because I find a new topic and then I'm like, I want to understand it like a 4th grader, a 5th grader, 11th grader, freshman year of college, and then a doctorate. So I want to understand how it scales in my brain, and then I can explain it really well.
Sure.
But our lymphatic system, which is totally ignored, which is like this, it's like the bastard cousin to the circulatory system, really works in tandem with that exchange. And so if you think about your circulatory system delivering blood, nutrients, vital nutrients to all our organs and all our tissues so we can be alive, we have about 17 liters of plasma, so blood plasma that leaks through that vasculature every single day. And then 20 liters moves through that, leaks out. 17 liters of that fluid is reabsorbed through the circulatory system and it goes back in, it comes around again. There's a 3-liter exchange in the middle. That's your lymph. It's like the fluid that's left over and kind of sits in between that interstitial space, that space between the cells. That's our lymph fluid, which is made up of like plasma proteins and nitrogen and different fat molecules. And there's no pump. There's no pump to drive all this fluid.
Right.
And so we have 3 times as much lymphatic fluid as we do blood, and there's nothing to drive it. And it's so these lymph vessels, which run all over the body and allow our whole immune system to proliferate a tumor or get to an organ or run to the support of a new infection. There's no driver of it. So our lymphatic system, it moves 3 ways. It moves through deep diaphragmatic breathing, through physical activity or movement, and when we're in parasympathetic, when we're in rest and digest. So it's like my favorite question to people is, are you moving 10 to 15,000 steps a day? Are you practicing deep diaphragmatic breathing? Are you in a predominant state of parasympathetic? And most people are like,
triple no.
Triple no. Maybe my lymph needs love.
Yeah.
And so it is lymph. It is this fluid exchange, but it's also like within our lymph nodes, which you can think of them as little sentinel stations along the lymph capillary. And just for anybody listening to this, it's not dissimilar to the circulatory system. There are tubes and little connectors and highways that connect these, but there's nodes. And within the lymph node is like our B cells, our T cells, our macrophages. It's your whole immune system.
Right.
that is born there, and B cells develop in the bones, T cells develop in the thymus, and with the flow, right, with the lymph flowing through these nodes, through the 10,000 steps, deep diaphragmatic breathing and parasympathetic, our immune system is able to reach all the places that it needs to go.
Right.
And it's like, how are we ignoring this system?
True.
How are we ignoring the system? So you think about that exchange rate of like the 20 liters leaks out, 17 reabsorbed. You got this 3%, 3 liters of fluid differential. What happens when we lose the ratio on that exchange and we just start to accumulate fluid, right? We get really puffy arms. We get weight gain. We get cellulite because all the fat cells are getting stuck in that collagen matrix. That's cellulite. So you start to see like, oh my God, that's a symptom of my lymphatic system being dysfunctional.
Correct.
What do I do about that? Right. Or we say, again, we take off our socks at the end of the night. We have these rings around our ankles. Like, what is that? Oh, that's all that puffy fluid that's sitting around my ankles.
Right.
We have all these ways in which the body is trying to signal us like, bro,
yeah,
what you're doing now isn't working for you.
Correct.
So me using, again, this suit, it's like you button in like a spacesuit.
Yeah.
It hugs you for 40 minutes with a warm hug. And it's one of the only suits to really focus on the diaphragm. So there's a diaphragm piece, and you can set the pressure and temperature to any setting on the whole body that you want. But I've been really working at breathing against this diaphragm piece in Flowpresso. So because a lot of the lymph has been removed from my belly, with my diaphragmatic breathing is creating this vacuum. It's creating a pump, and it's driving up all the fluid from my lower extremities, and it's getting it right back up. And the lymph needs to get back into the circulatory system to be managed by the liver. Or leave the body through the primary emunctories. So it's this whole system of like managing garbage, managing your immune system, all the fluid exchange, and your average doctor gets an hour on the lymph. So I'm like super fired up about it right now, just to like, yes, work with this tool, but also like teach people like this low hanging fruit on the lifestyle things that you can do to move this system.
True. No, it's such a powerful thing you just said. We underestimate the importance of focusing on lymph, and we literally assume we're fine, and we haven't done anything for our lymph on most of the days that we exist in the world. How crazy is that? And we talk about how buying like a trampoline and bouncing helps. Mm-hmm. We have to move. We have to exercise. It's for your gut motility. It's for your lymph. It's for everything. It's for resetting the nervous system. But we oftentimes are not moving enough steps. I noticed a shift in my own body in the last year because I shifted the way my company works. Instead of being on the road meeting with doctors all day, I became a podcast guest. And so my job is to sit on camera and be Dr. Shivani for an hour back to back 5 days a week. And so finally I looked at my steps and I was like, well, there's the problem. You're moving less than 3,000 steps a day, other than your lift workouts. Okay. Yeah. So we have to really keep looking at our body. Our body's going to give us a lot of signals, and it's our job to listen to them. But lymph, I think, is one of those things where we don't even know what signals to look for. And that's why we're not paying attention. We're like, oh, I just have allergies. Oh, I just get sick all the time. Oh, my gut's always off. I'm always bloated. Like I hear a lot of like complaints as being minor, but what we underestimate is we aren't aging. This is not just aging and, oh, it sucks. This is inflammaging. This is a backup of the lymphatic system. It's congested. This is gut dysbiosis. And we have all these tools out there. We have the tools you're talking about. I have all the Ayurvedic tools ready to go. And so when it comes to this suit, I tried it. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. So is this like a habit you do every day? And what are some of the other things you do to support lymph?
Yeah, no, it's not something you do every day, and it's a practitioner tool. Okay. So this is not a home unit. It's not, but any practitioner, anywhere from a esthetician to a plastic surgeon to chiropractor and medical doctor, are using Flowpresso in practice, and it's really, it's very affordable for what it is for a medical device. Sure. What I'll say about the Sue is that that's one way this is me to support my lymphatic system every 4 days. So if you think about being in the suit, which you've been in, it's kind of like rolling the body from the bottom like a tube of toothpaste,
Yeah.
And we're going to move everything out, right? That wave keeps rolling through after 40 minutes. It's like your lymphatic system doesn't drain in that way. So we want to give it, 3 days at least in between sessions. Think about all that information that's moved out of the lymph, being scanned through the lymph nodes, being taken into the liver, being processed. So we want to give the body time.
Sure.
A manual lymphatic drainage therapist can do the same thing. It's going to take them much longer. It's more like it's like a 90-minute on the low side session to do a really good manual therapy session. So that, just to give it contracts and juxtaposition.
Yeah.
The other things that I'll do at home, there's 2 products from Flowpresso that I love that are home tools. Mm-hmm. There's an orb, a vibrating ball that I'll just stick in my armpits. And then there's a wand that looks like a green vibrator that I'm often posting videos of me. I'm doing lymphatic drainage on my face, head, and neck. And because of my history with Lyme and mold, that's a daily for me.
Okay.
I want this to always be draining, dental infections, old root canals. I was always on antibiotics as a kid. I had huge tonsils. I want to make sure this moves, right? We've got this propensity now. It's like, look at yourself on your cell phone. Yeah. Look at your posture.
It's true.
You are closing down all the channels of drainage for your face in that poor neck posture. So that's a daily for me. I think about it like brushing my teeth. And when I don't do it, when I go a week, I notice it.
Wow.
I really, really notice it. Sinus pathways, all those things. So I use Flow Vibrate, Flow Orb daily. Contrast therapy, as I mentioned before, doing the hot to the cold. That's great for lymph.
Right.
In front of my red light is a vibration plate.
Yeah.
So that's your mental picture for the audience. He's naked. He's on the vibe plate. He's in front of the red light. But that is.
It's good for you.
It's good for you. It's good for you.
It's a great biohacking setup. It's investing the time and doing the things in the here and now that are going to prevent what you've already been through. So many of us are just trying to prevent the worst. And it's like you've already been through the worst and you know what that's like. And so you are preventing with that self-awareness of, I never want to go there again.
Yeah.
And I need to invest in the tools for this body, the physical body of yours, to stay detoxed and healthy. And I think so many of us have this habit of check engine light comes on and we're like, I'll do it later. Yeah. My car flashed me a warning the other day. I'm still laughing at myself. It said coolant needed now. And then it went away and I forgot about it. And what did I get a week later? Check engine. And now I have to deal with the problem. And I still don't have time to deal with it. And it's like, really? Would you like your car to blow up? Like, what would you like to have happen? And so I just love this conversation because you are sharing with us like you said, the staircase of tools that you've already experienced and gone through. And most of us who had horrible health issues early on know later that it is, like you said, a trial and error. We are bio-individual and we have to keep trying what works for us. Like I make an epic turmeric. That's what I'm all about, is turmeric. But it might not work for everyone. We are each different. It's okay. I'm not going to assume anything any one of us has made works for everybody. But that's the fun of it. As unique individuals, we get to go try these different things and figure out, oh, this is the one for me. Now I'm going to commit to it and make it part of my daily self-practice rituals. Yeah,
100%. 100%. And I think, just to mention, it can sound overwhelming to people. And this is my choice. I try not to be, I am not neurotic about doing these therapies. It's just layered into life. Yeah. It's just layered into life. It's just part of my day. I schedule in my calendar, I schedule time outside. I have a morning routine that I don't think about. I have a nighttime routine I don't think about. Lights go off, red lights go on. The spectrum of light that's going to suppress melatonin production, that's done at nighttime. I have red light glasses on, but it's just part of the design. Right. And I made these changes because I was really sick. I would just, if you are inspired to hear these words and you're saying to yourself, I'd rather avoid that level of intensity in my health, you can make that choice today. And I think it's really powerful to to take ownership of your health, like with this radical ownership. Like, what does that mean? It's just, I think pick one or two things that you want to shift in your life. And you'll layer in there, habits take time to form and cement into your daily practice. Just do a couple and you'd be shocked if you constantly did 3 little things, how it changes how you feel, or maybe even when you look in the mirror, how your body looks. It's really wild.
It is. It is. Do you use a tongue scraper?
I have one. I don't use it all the time.
Okay.
I would tell you that that's something where dental, aside from me using a really good toothbrush and toothpaste and, one with nano silver in it and one that's for gum health, I could probably use more structure in my dental care, but I have one and I do it sometimes. And yeah.
So at Ayurveda, we teach to use a copper tongue scraper every single day for oral health and for lymphatic health. We teach about oil pulling. So we can have that conversation next time because it's so much fun. If you understand the Ayurvedic self-care rituals, and like you just said, it doesn't have to be a thought. Like I have certain self-care rituals that are just part of my daily hygiene. And thus lymphatic support has been built into my daily life, just like brushing my teeth. And so what if we could build the society where we life designed our lives in a way where we incorporated these powerful tools so that, like you said, they're just layered in. They're not, because I think one of the fears is, at least for me, I don't have time to give you an hour and a half to do A, B, C, and D. I got to get up and get the kids out the door, gym, work, whatever. But again, it's all a choice. And so how can you fit these beautiful tools in, but in a sympathetic way into your schedule?
Yeah. Energy behind the action. It's like, what is the energy behind the action of this step towards vibrant health? Exactly. So yeah. If it comes from love, not out of desperation, if it comes from self-love, it's always going to be right. And whatever that means to you.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved having this conversation today on the podcast. I feel like I don't even feel like we will be having another episode because there's so much more to go into. But I just want to thank you for taking the time to share your story, share your journey, share your beautiful stepping stones that were able to help you climb up and out of what happened and really put you on this path to true healing and service and impacting others. And are there any last words or thoughts you want to share with us today before we wrap up?
No, not really. I just think that, if you can find a moment of stillness, if anything resonated with you in the conversation, if you can find a moment of stillness and you really just, you lean into your body, it's like, well, what's in there for me? Like, what do I really need to change? What am I called to? I think the body like inherently knows. There's like, oh, that one piece was like really, it could be the smallest little thing, but your body always knows. So I would just say, ask, what can you do today to be a better version of yourself? And, I implore you to take that step.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I was so deep listening in there. I was like, oh, yes, absolutely. My whole body was like, I crave a moment of stillness. Could you give me one today?
I do too. I'm going to take, I've been going since 7. I'm going to take one.
Yeah. I call that tea time is me time. I teach it as like, just pause, have that cup of tea, soak it up. It can be your coffee, whatever beverage you choose. Yep. But just soak up that moment of stillness for yourself.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you want more information about Freddie and his podcast, will you share where they can find you?
Yes, they can find me on Instagram. I hang out there a lot. It's beautifully-broken.world. My podcast is called The Beautifully Broken Podcast. You can search Freddie Kimmel on Instagram as well. But The Beautifully Broken Podcast on Spotify and Apple, and we got a YouTube channel, beautifully-broken.world. So it's all linked in there. We put out content for free. I don't, I have a store where a lot of the stuff we talk about, I have a link to, but there, there's no courses, there's no coaching, no, nothing like that. The platform is pretty much me using the conversations when I can get people on like you or the other Dr. Gupta that was on this season, or anybody from Naisha Winters. We talk about integrative oncology. I could go on and on and on. There's so many good guests. We're about to hit episode 200. So It's high level and it's fun and I love doing it. So we'll keep going. You can find me over there.
Perfect. And he just did a castor oil podcast, guys. It was phenomenal. So we will be talking about castor oil next time. So thank you so much for joining me. You're so epic.
Oh, thank you. You are too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.